Thank you. Mr. Wolf, when you were acting DHS Secretary, the border was secure, was it not, for all intents and purposes?
We worked every day to secure it, every day, every week, every month.
And we had reached a very low number of illegal border crossings, had we not?
I think by a number of different metrics, and that's certainly one, the number of apprehensions fell.
And since then, of course, we have seen a mass migration of unprecedented proportions, millions and millions flooding into the country. Were there changes in law that occurred to account for this? Or is it entirely a matter of not enforcing the law?
There's been no changes in law that I'm aware of.
Mr. Edlaw, there have been a lot of instances now when the administration's been called out by the courts for failing to enforce the law. What's been the administration's response to these court orders?
Well, you know, they've, with the exception of the September 30th memo, which was enjoined and vacated in June of 2022, to the extent that the administration has been able to get around the court orders they have.
Has anybody challenged them on that in court? Have there been any?
Some states have filed, have challenged them. Yes.
Has any court come back and issued a criminal contempt citation for failing
not
to?
That I'm aware.
Are there any pending?
I couldn't answer that, sir.
All right, Mr. Wolf, any thoughts on that? Mr. Bradbury?
I don't believe there are any pending. Obviously, Mr. Chairman, it's difficult for a court to impose contempt.
Right. Well, what I'm trying to do is determine the difference between simple maladministration and deliberate violation of law. I think that that's a very bright line that we need to define. We spoke of detention. I think Mr. Ricklin-Melnick made a very good point. You've got 10 illegal aliens. You have beds to detain 5. What do you do with the other 5? Is that what's actually going on, Mr. Wolf?
So not only should you be detaining, but if you're not able to detain, then you can certainly have them wait, such as what we did under MPP. I think that's an interesting point that was missed in this whole debate, right? We started talking about detention and how that's never achievable. And I'm not here saying that you can detain everyone, but there is another option that Congress in the INA tells you to do. So if you can't do that, then you can hold them in a third country, as we did under the migrant protection protocols. Again, interesting that that was not brought up. So there are other ways that you can enforce the law. This idea that if you can't detain them, that simply they're released into American communities is not the law. And we shouldn't pretend that it is, but yet that is what is occurring. It's what's been occurring for the last several years.
Is this actually a violation of law, or is it just a very poor decision?
I would say it's both.
Mr. Edlaw, you know, I'm told that all of the capacity that we have right now isn't being used, and yet illegal aliens are being released into the country.
I don't believe it is being used, Congressman. I think, for the most part, there are more interest right now in, it was in paroling people in, now it's giving notices to appear at the border and letting people go along their way. There's not an interest in detaining as far as I can see.
Let's talk about parole authority. Congress did tighten the criteria for paroles back in the mid-1990s, precisely because it was being abused in the manner that Mr. Ricklin-Melnick outlined. Is it true that 20,000 mass paroles were done under the Trump administration, Mr. Wolf?
So there are a number of parole programs that we administered, obviously, that we began or we continue to administer that was going on during the Obama administration and alike. But I think, again, the important point here is, are you trying to secure the border, and are you trying to hold people accountable, and are you trying to get them the protections they need? So as they parole people into the United States, there's no asylum protections for them. They're not in asylum proceedings. So if they truly need asylum, why aren't they being put into asylum proceedings? Instead, they're simply paroling them in to the country to, again, to have this status for a year, perhaps even 2 years at a time. It doesn't make any sense. It's a little smoke and mirrors of what the administration is trying to do at the border.
Okay. Asylum hearings are designed to be adversarial in nature. They're presided over by immigration judges bound by the law. How does that differ from the administration's replacement of this process with USCIS asylum officers? Mr. Bradbury?
Well, it's completely different now because they're reviewing their own appeals of their own decisions. It's not an adversarial process.
Is there a provision of law that gives them this authority,
No, it's in violation of Section 103 of the INA. It's the Attorney General and the immigration judges that have to hear those appeals.
Well, I see my time has expired, and I see Mr. Swall will